For example, NLP can use also not for one-on-one therapy, but in a group. For example, some lecturers, they use what is called anchors. Actually, anchor is a very important term in NLP. We didn't talk about it before. Anchor means that, but we actually use it in the beginning. Anchor means if I have a state, it's not just enough to elicit a state, to create a state. It's also very important that I can draw the state out whenever I want. Because let's say I'm doing this meditation, it takes me 15 minutes to create a feeling of confidence, and then it's good enough when I'm going to this board meeting. But it's not very good when I'm just in the elevator and there is this really beautiful girl next to me and I want to say hello to her. I have 2 minutes, I have 1 minute. It's not the time, I'm going to the toilet, I'm breathing, I think of the color of confidence, whatever. It doesn't work that way, right? I want to access some states really immediately, sometimes. And some people, like, for example, Anthony Robbins, you can really see how they use anchors all the time. They activate different states all the time. They do all kind of movement with their hands, and only somebody who knows NLP can really see that. Actually, today he doesn't do it so much anymore because they are already so ingrained in him. But in the beginning, you see these early lectures, his early appearances, he used that anchors all the time. And everything can become an anchor. For example, when a Jew or anybody think about, I don't know, swastika, the Nazi symbol, immediately you feel kind of dread. Or when you see a skull, immediately you have something like that. Or for example, you see heart, red heart, it also gives something because it's anchored to specific feelings. That's also an anchor. Or and you can create anchor very, very quickly. I give you an example. Look. Okay, so look. Okay, so I did one thing, but now, see. You all expect me to do the, right? I did it once, but it was already anchored to you to this, right? So the idea is that we are very easily create connection between things, and then this association trigger us to expect that thing to come. But the thing is how to use it in a good way, how to use these anchors in a good way so we can really be able to benefit from these anchors. So example, when you do a lecture, some lecturers, for example, anchor one part when they go on the stage, when they sit on the corner of the stage, they kind of talk about sad thing. And when they sit in the other one type of the stage, they talk about happy thing. And when they sit in the center of the stage, they talk about things that make us be excited. And then they kind of, just by moving on a Sapatia level, they can play with the emotions of the audience and they do it in a good way. Not talking only like that. Some people, they know how to anchor different tones to different states or different impressions that they do for different states. For example, Obama was very good in NLP. Whenever he almost started the lecture, hey, why did he do that? He talked to an audience, it's million people in the audience, hi. Because what happened when somebody, what is the anchor of doing like this? Something with his friend, he comes to shake hands, right? So he immediately elicits kind of a feeling of friendliness on the other people. That's an example of like using this anchor kind of things, even when you do lecture. And actually, a person who look at another person carefully enough, he can really see the anchors that the person already have, because we have a huge amount of anchors. So if one person, for example, butterflies are an anchor for him for feeling really good, and that person doesn't feel very good, you can just talk about butterfly in a way. Or you can just, there are a lot of ways to do it. I'm just talking in a very naive way, but there are very, very sophisticated way to create what is called association from an anchor, disassociation from an anchor. A person is anchored that every time she think about her ex-boyfriend, she get depressed. So how, and it always comes into her mind, how you disassociate this anchor of thinking about boyfriend from being depressed. You can also want sometimes to break anchors. So there is a lot of tricks into this world. It's very clever, actually. There are very clever techniques to use anchor and to make anchor collapse. And that's actually very, very, very powerful in marketing. In marketing, what is logos? Logos are actually anchors between a symbol to some that represent the company to have a positive experience that the company wants to represent. That's also an anchor. And when you see how marketing works, you see that usually no commercial actually try to convince you, exactly my point, trying to convince you that that the product is good in a logical way. What do? they anchor the product to some emotion that you have longing to experience. And then whenever you see the program, this anchor of the company, whenever you see the product of the company, immediately this emotion surfaces. If I'm taking an idea, whenever I see Apple, I think about something which is really kind of clean and sophisticated, high-tech and classy. So I buy an iPhone, and people go and buy iPhone rather than much cheaper phone is better sometimes, because for them it anchored to being classy, being really highly educated, or being really like top-notch in the level of society, some kind of thing like that. But really, if you see commercials of like companies that invest millions in their marketing, one of the most important processes they do, what emotion do we want to connect our product with, and how we can anchor in the public mind this emotion with our product. That's actually what they do mostly. So that's a very powerful thing. And the question is, how do you use this really powerful way the mind works in our benefits? What anchors do we want to have, and what anchors we don't want to have? So we'll talk a little bit about anchors and how to do it, and we can do an anchor if you want. So as you remember, we talked about there are 3 types of representation systems. And in this, we actually come to how the meditation in the beginning worked. 3 types of representation system: kinesthetic, visual, and auditory. There are another, you can say they taste and they smell, but actually taste and smell are connected with very primordial level of our being, with our animal, more like animal brain and not our cortex. And this is, so they can't really be very useful anchors. Actually, they are very good to break state. Actually, they're very much grounding. They are very good, very useful in taking us out of state rather than creating states. When, for example, a person is, and it's also very useful, we'll understand why it's very useful in a minute. So if a person is very visual, and I will give him a visual anchor, it will be great. If I want the person, let's say I have a nephew and I want him to laugh every time he think of me, for example, I can look for every time we're together and he's really happy, and I touch my nose. Let's say I want to anchor touching my nose to him being happy. So every time he's happy, I'm touching my nose. So his brain associates touching my nose with him being happy. And then sometimes he will see me and he will not be happy, and I touch my nose and he starts feeling happy immediately. He doesn't know even why. Every time I see you, I'm happy, and if even no one doesn't notice that I did this anchor, as an example. But if, for example, it'd be very auditory, then maybe touching my nose like this, which is visual, will not be very good. Maybe I will say, there is a word I use. I don't know, if his name is John, I will call him, every time I say it's like John or something, which is a special way, which will, if it's just normal John, it will not work. But I call him his name in a very special way, which will be associated with, I don't know, with love, for example. But if, for example, he's kinesthetic, maybe it's the way I touch him. Maybe it's the time I touch him a little bit like this. I will see him. When he is in a happy state, I will touch him in this state. And then he associates touch with happiness, and then I can activate it in him when I want to. Now, it sounds, again, manipulative, but I can do it to myself as well. When I want to feel happy, when I'm feeling happy, I can create an anchor for myself. In NLP, usually, it's not like you fish a state and then you anchor it. You elicit a state. You create a state, and then you anchor the state, so you can pull it out of your subconscious whenever you want. But you can even use states in life, and you're in some good state, you can do anchoring for that state. And so for anchor to really work, it's very important that to do the anchor in a very clear way, which means the symbol or something that will, and we're going to do an experiment with this really in a second. You will want to connect the anchor with a state when it's at its strongest level, which means, let's say I want to anchor some kind of, I don't know, this gesture. I don't know how it's done, like this in Facebook. It's so annoying that people are having all these pictures that have the heart like this. It's so annoying. But let's say I connect, just for the example, this thing with love, okay? So how would I do it? I will try to elicit love. And when the state becomes the strongest, then I will do it. And then when it comes to its peak and it's associated, then I will break the state. How do I break the state? We talked about 2 ways. For example, I ask people, which smell you like more, the one of popcorn or the one of vanilla, for example. and that will already take him to a body or to something, to a much different aspect of his brain that will be activated, and then we break the state. And then what I want to do, I want to repeat the state again. I bring it back into love, do this connection. I hope not. It's not. This is not a symbol of people here, but just saying. And then it's too cheesy, but this is my idea. But then I break the state again. And then I bring it back into the state. If I do it 3 times usually, it will already be really strongly associated. And then whenever that person will do this, he'll feel love, for example. And it actually can be very strong. If the person is, for example, kinesthetic, because it's very physical for him. You see it as visual, but for him it's kinesthetic. Now, what makes the strongest anchor? Obviously, an anchor is both visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. Because if I do it to a group, I don't know, everybody can be different. I want to do something that works for everybody. So then I will do a symbol which is actually powerful for everybody in the group in a way. So, and we're going to go and do some trick with it, but this is actually the main principles. I want to elicit a state, like the technique we saw in the beginning with the picture, for example. It's an idea. Then when the state is at peak, I want to create an anchor for this. Then I want to break the state. And then I want to go into the state again and again a few times. And then the anchor is working. So